This is Judgment, developed by Ryuga Gotoku Studio and published by Sega. Judgment is a spin-off of the Yakuza series. It's set in Kamurocho, just like the Yakuza series, but you are playing Yagami, who is a not police detective, he's just a detective. Private detective, that's the one. So gameplay-wise, you still have the Yakuza kind of roaming the streets of Kamurocho and getting into random fights and getting into some extravagant one-on-one fights, etc. But you also have a kind of detective gameplay where you can kind of trail people. You need to do some kind of investigative work. You have a drone that you can fly around. You have a kind of spot the hidden item kind of mini games and things like that. So there's some extra stuff based around investigative work. Story-wise, you play Yagami, who is a former lawyer, but one of his cases goes really bad and he takes it not too well, so he decides to be a private investigator instead. There's a case that comes up that there's a murder of this well-known Yakuza is the suspect for it, and he's brought in to kind of get him off the hook, more or less. And that's kind of where I am with the story. I'm still very early in the game. Gameplay-wise is a lot of fun. I mean, it still has the Yakuza combat stuff, which is really fun, even if it's a bit basic. And it's got the kind of slice of Japanese life that I kind of like because I'm a big weeb. And it still has the kind of humor and kind of goofiness of the Yakuza series, juxtaposed with super serious crime and serial killers and things like that. So it's got this weird vibe coming from it. But I really like it. Again, only very early, and I'm not super familiar with the Yakuza series. I played the very, very first one back on, I think it was a PS2 game, and I have watched a couple of streams of people playing some of the later games, but I haven't played them myself. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, if you like Yakuza, and that series has kind of wrapped up its main story now, and this is its spin-off, possibly next iteration, I'm having a lot of fun with it. I think it's really good. Judgment is available only on PS4. Hey, how you doing? Did you like that where I kicked you and you floated 6 foot into the air? Does he take the beard off too?
Who are you?
He did take the beard off. This is Cadence of Hyrule, Crypt of the Necrodancer featuring The Legend of Zelda, developed by Brace Yourself Games and published by Nintendo. Cadence of Hyrule combines the rhythm-based gameplay of Crypt of the Necrodancer, so it's a kind of roguelike where you would proceed through dungeons, and gameplay was where you would have to move to the beat of music, so all of your movements would have to match whatever the music was playing at the time, and enemies would move in similar vein. And then it adds, on top of that, the Legend of Zelda settings, characters, enemies, and that kind of thing. So OG Crypt of the Necrodancer is your standard roguelike. You start at the top of the dungeon, you work your way through various levels of the dungeon, you get to the end. If you die at any stage, you go all the way back to the start, and you lose anything that you had gained up to that point. Cadence of Hyrule does bring across some of these roguelike elements, but not all of them, so it's a bit more palatable to people who wouldn't necessarily be used to roguelikes, who might be coming at this looking at it as a Legend of Zelda game instead. So when you die in Cadence of Hyrule, you do lose all of your items, but you can respawn at any checkpoint that you've found across the map. So there is a whole map now rather than a completely randomized dungeon. The map itself is randomized at new game choice, but once you've made the save file, it's set for the rest of that save file. And there are various Sheikah stones or Sheikah statues around the map that let you kind of set up checkpoints. So if you die, you don't necessarily lose a lot of progress. You do lose all your money and any temporary items, but you don't lose progress, and you don't lose weapons and diamonds, which are a kind of special currency that you get for defeating enemies, and you can sometimes find them in dungeons. Anyway, in Cadence of Hyrule, you still have the Crypta the Necrodancer gameplay in that you have to move to the beat of music, but the music this time around is Legend of Zelda music, so Legend of Zelda music is already very, very good, and the kind of remixes and covers they have for this are phenomenal. They're so good. So it's good that they nailed that, considering the music is sort of a focal point of the gameplay. You play as Link or Zelda for the majority of the game. You play a bit of Cadence as well at the beginning, and I think you unlock her later on. I haven't gotten that far yet. So the gameplay you're going to see here is all Link. I have a stream up on the channel as well that I played mostly Zelda, so if you want to see some Zelda gameplay, you can watch that. I would only suggest you play Link first if you haven't played Crypta the Necrodancer before, because his early gameplay is a little easier and it's a bit more like a tutorial. But to be fair, it very quickly gets into the meat of the game, so it's not very long if you do decide to want to start with Zelda. Her early game's a little bit harder, but not too much different. This is really, really good. I'm really enjoying the music. I was a bit scared of the game, to be honest, like moving to the beat kind of thing. Anytime I've seen gameplay of Crypta the Necrodancer, I've just been terrified of the game. As much as I want to play it, I'm like, I can't do that. It's way too hard. But Cadence of Hyrule does introduce it to you really easily, and the kind of extra things they have of like checkpoints and kind of diamond currency. That also introduces a thing called fixed beat mode. So if you are having trouble with moving to the beat, fixed beat mode basically takes that away, and you can just listen to the music and play the game as normal, as it becomes more of a tactics game in that sense. Cadence of Hyrule is available on Switch, and I really want the soundtrack to come out at some point because I want it. The music is super duper good. This is The Sinking City, developed by Frogwares and published by Big Ben Interactive and also Frogwares. The Sinking City is a detective game set in the city of Oakmont, Massachusetts around the 20s. It's based around the kind of Lovecraft horror, the kind of Cthulhu thing, you know, with tentacles and sea monsters and sleeping gods and all that jazz, and madness and overt racism, but you know, it's the 20s, so I guess you gotta put up with that stuff. Gameplay wise, you take on the role of 20s detective guy whose name escapes me, but whatever, you know who he is. He is brought to Oakmont because he's having visions of the city, and you know, he's like, what the hell? And gotta find out what's happening here. And when he gets there, he finds a city that is sinking, as you might imagine from the title, and it's full of occultists and weird shit, and people are like, yeah, that's what the city's like. Okay, so. And basically the game is you solving various detective issues, like how did this person die, and how do I get to the bottom of the sea, and why is that stone glowing at me, and is that tentacle monster real or not, and so on. It kind of follows from the gameplay of Frogware's previous titles, like the Sherlock Holmes series. You know, you're putting various pieces of clues together to make deductions, and the deductions can lead to outcomes from that case. There are multiple deductions you can make from different clues, so the cases can have different outcomes depending on what deductions you make. So your route through the game isn't necessarily set in stone. It's not linear. You can make, you know, the choices you decide to make depending on how you interpret the clues. That side of the game is really strong. The character and world building is really strong as well. You do get a sense of presence from the location and from the characters. You know, they're very interesting. The city itself is kind of a pain in the ass to navigate, but you know, half of it's underwater, so you know, I guess that makes sense. One place where the game falls down on is combat. I don't think the game needed it personally. It's kind of basic and kind of frustrating because you can die very quickly, especially if you decide to tackle the side quests a little too early in the game. You just get stomped. Enemies are kind of weak, but they're also really strong. You know, like they don't have a lot of health, but they hit you really hard. So it can get very frustrating, especially when you're just kind of there for the mythos and the detective stuff, and you're kind of forced into combat a lot of the time. You can, of course, tone down the combat. So difficulty-wise, you can separately set the difficulty for combat versus the difficulty for puzzles. So, you know, if you really want to focus on the puzzles, you can make them a bit more difficult and just tone down the difficulty for combat. The game is also a bit janky. There's a lot of bugs, a lot of screen tearing, a lot of super long load times. If you die, you're sent back to a telephone booth checkpoint rather than to a checkpoint in the game, which is super annoying. Those things aside, it does have a strong story, and the detective puzzle deduction thing is really good. And if you are into the kind of Cthulhu thing, which I sort of am, I'm not super into it, but I do find it interesting. You'll probably like it if you can put up with the kind of crappy combat, to be honest. Sinking City is available on PC, PS4, Xbox One, and supposedly it'll be on Switch at some point, but right now it isn't.
Now get out!
This is My Friend Pedro, developed by Dead Toast Entertainment and published by Devolver Digital. So you may have seen My Friend Pedro as GIFs around Twitter. I've certainly seen them for a long time now, just seeing this guy in a mask doing crazy bullet time shit in a 2D game. It's doing really fancy tricks and spins and shooting people and doing stupid shit. And it'd be kind of, for a long time it was like, what is this game? Where the hell is it? Why haven't I seen it? So My Friend Pedro is a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up. It's kind of like an arcade type game where you are going for like points totals and things like that. You're rewarded extra points for keeping a multiplier going, so for making extra kills, and then trying to make fancier kills. So if you do like a flip while you're shooting people, or you shoot two people at the same time, or you kick some guy's head and someone else's head, or you fire some bullets off a frying pan and it ricochets off the wall and it kills a guy or something like that. You know, it's like stupid shit, but really fun. So the developers have gone on to say like they were inspired by things like The Matrix and Equilibrium and things like that, that have a lot of gun fu all over the place, and there's certainly a lot of gun fu here. The main character, who's not called Pedro, the banana is called Pedro, but the main character, shooty guy, basically is controlled with the left analog stick, and the right analog stick is for shooting, or for aiming rather, and then you have the triggers to do that. You can split your aim to two separate two separate enemies. You can jump and flip and go into focus time that, you know, kind of slows things down for you, so you can line up shots a bit easier. You can do rolls, you can kick enemies, you can kick things at enemies, you can swing through glass and lots of other stuff. There's a lot of fun things to be done with the game. The game is also kind of hard. The normal difficulty has kind of regenerating health, but you can very quickly get overwhelmed if you don't know what you're doing. And you do end up with a kind of claw grip if you're going to play this on with a controller, because you have the right trigger for shooting, you have the left trigger for splitting your aim, you have the left bumper or L1 for not L1, whatever the hell it is on a Switch controller. ZL, was it? I don't know, whatever, on the left. for dodging, and you got to click in the stick to go into focus mode and jump and shoot, and like it's very quickly to get very overwhelmed and have this horrible claw, basically. I'm really enjoying it, but the game thinks I'm really shit, and I guess maybe I am really shit because I keep getting really bad scores. So maybe I don't quite have the grasp of the game yet, but it's a lot of fun. Very simple. Story-wise, I don't know. I guess I'm not far enough to really get any kind of story. Your character is like some kind of psycho or whatever, because he's imagining this floating banana that's talking to him and telling him to kill everybody. So I don't know. Not very far into it. I only kind of really started playing it the last couple of days, so might be more to say later on. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's just lots of stupid gunplay and acrobatics and all that good stuff. My Friend Pedro is on PC and Nintendo Switch. This is Bloodstained, Ritual of the Night, developed by Artplay and published by 505 Games. So I featured Bloodstained a couple of times on the channel now in different videos. This is a Kickstarter project that I backed in 2015. So it's been a while, I've been waiting a long time to get my hands on the finished version of this game. A couple of demos have come out. A prequel game, Curse of the Moon, came out. That was also featured at some point. I don't remember what month or what year that happened in. Anyway, the wait has been worth it, because this game is really good. So if you're not familiar and haven't been watching any of my videos, you jerks, Bloodstained is a Metroidvania, or a Castlevania, because it basically is Castlevania again. You play Miriam, who is a shardbinder. You are going into a castle that may or may not have vampires in it, and you are trying to stop a friend of yours from, summoning demons and killing lots of people and so on, and bad things. And you do this by jumping and slashing at enemies and stealing their shards. So this is where most of the gameplay comes from, is a kind of old school Castlevania 2D, jumping around, slashing at people and getting new abilities. So shards are basically enemy powers. So if any enemy you kill has a chance to drop their shard, and if you get their shard, you get their ability. So that might be being able to throw or shoot arrows at people. It might mean becoming more resistant to electricity. It might mean having a ring of pornographs even, I was about to say. Photographs flying around you. It might mean dropping ice on people or making your attacks faster or whatever. There are so many enemies, and every enemy, or practically every enemy, there's some that don't, but practically every enemy has a shard with a different ability in it. So there's a lot of room for variation in your character build. Additional to that, there are a great many weapon types. You have daggers, you have swords, you have rapiers, you have great swords, katanas, clubs, spears. I'm gonna see if I get them all. You have feet, because you can kick people, just put on special shoes. And they all have different attack properties. Some of them are very fast, some of them are very slow, etc. And then additional to that, a lot of weapons have special techniques that are input based, so like Street Fighter moves, quarter circles, half circles, and things like that that do different things depending on what weapon you have. The weapons themselves can have different abilities, so there's one weapon that gets stronger the more you use a different shard. There's one weapon that is invisible, so you don't actually know how long the blade is, which is kind of weird. You have one shoe that is called, I think they're called toy shoes, that they make a squeaky noise every time you walk, which is really funny. I mean, it doesn't add anything to the actual combat, but it's just really funny to hear it go squeak, 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 squeak every time you walk. There's a lot of funny, stupid shit in the game, as well as, the serious of the world is ending and there are demons everywhere, which is great. I always like that. Even with that, there are accessories that additionally have different properties. Some of them are very basic in that they're just, you get extra defense or you get extra strength, and then some of them are like, the more of the map you have uncovered, the stronger your attack will be. which is a really weird one. And then there's some that are in like the inverted, so the less health you have, the stronger you are, and things like that. There's lots and lots of extra things in Bloodstained. You've got a whole cooking mechanic where you can cook lots of different food, and every time you eat it, you get a permanent buff. No, sorry, not every time. The first time you eat it, you get a permanent buff. And then that's not even really talking about the core gameplay. You know, the various different enemy types that can be quite tricky to fight, but they're a lot of fun. You have the different bosses that have great some of them have great personality, some of them have zero personality, but there you go. It's good also that some of the bosses from Curse of the Moon return for Ritual of the Night. They get a good showing in this. There's some really fun characters. I actually like the vast majority of the characters. It's great, the cast. There's just so much in the game, and I'm really happy it turned out so well. It's not to say that there aren't bugs. Some of the animations aren't great. The game does lag in a couple of places. The Nintendo Switch version isn't great at the moment. I'd probably give that a while if you were interested in getting it on Switch. There was a bug early in release that kind of blocked progression for people if they updated the game, and since a lot of consoles are on auto update, that was kind of an issue. That's been fixed now, so you don't need to worry about that. But yeah, like overall this game turned out like exceptionally well. It's right up there with Symphony of the Night and Aria of Sorrow. It's actually very similar to both of those games. So fantastic. I hope this is the start of a new series of Castlevania types in name only kind of thing. Bloodstained would be the new Castlevania. That would be great. This game is available on PC, PS4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch, but remember, it's a bit not great on Switch at the moment, so I would probably wait for that. If you're interested in more gameplay, there's a stream that I did of this where I die constantly, so that might be enjoyable. I don't know. I got stuck on him. Fuck. God damn it. Those were some of the games I played for June 2019. Bloodstained, Ritual of the Night really stood out for me this month. I've been playing it since it came out. I'm very close to the end now, very close to the end boss, so I'm just kind of doing mop-up at the moment. But yeah, I've been very impressed with what I've played. Definitely a standout for me this month. Judgment, I'll be looking to move on to probably after Bloodstained. I haven't played much of it, but what I have played, I've enjoyed a lot. So I'm looking to get back into that with the Kamurocho and some beating up random goons and doing random Japanese things. Sinking City, I think, will probably be a bit of a hate play or a rage play, just because it's kind of janky and the combat's not great. But I do like the story and I do like the investigative stuff, so we'll see how long I can stick with that. Cadence of Hyrule I'm really liking, but I am having trouble with the combat, with the kind of rhythm-based stuff. I may drop back to the fixed beat mode that I mentioned, I don't know. Because I really like the music and I've always liked the Zelda setting. We'll see with that one. My Friend Pedro will probably be added to the list of games I play when I'm in between games, so things like Dead Cells and Katana Zero and things like that. Something I'll play when I don't really want to put too much effort in. But again, that kind of claw hand control thing, I don't know. I don't know how long I'll stick with it. It looks really fun, but it's kind of hard to play. Moving on though, for next month, July, it's a bit quiet, so there's two games I have on my radar anyway. One of them is Sea of Solitude, which was announced at last year's E3. Ubisoft title, and it's a kind of like a third-person kind of platformer, but also story and things like that. So it reminds me a bit of Rhyme, that has been featured on this channel before. So we'll see what that's like. Also, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. I've played the other Ultimate Alliance games, and they're not attached to Activision this time. So hopefully it won't have all the Activision shit. Marvel Ultimate Alliance is a kind of top-down dungeon brawler, but with Marvel characters. I'm interested in playing it. It's been a while since I've played the other Ultimate Alliances. But that's all that's really on my radar for next month, so I might pull in some of the games I only had a small look at this month or last month or previous month, whatever. Elsewhere, I have done some streams of some of the games that were featured here. They're up on the channel, the archives on YouTube. If you're watching this video early enough, the VODs are probably still on Twitch as well if you want to look at them there. Otherwise, you can always catch me on either of those channels. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next month.